joining today's webinar. So this is Experian's webinar on where can the graduate scheme at Experian take you. Hopefully you can all hear us okay, aren't having any tech issues or anything like that, but it's great to see so many of you here today to find out a little bit more about Experian as an organisation, but also the opportunities we have as well. So we've got sort of quite a bit of information to go through with you over the next hour. We're going to be doing introductions shortly, but very briefly, my name's Amy and I'm from Experian's Early Careers team, and I'm joined today by our panel, who you should be able to see on your screen as well. And our panel members have all either recently completed a graduate scheme with us or are currently completing a graduate scheme with us. And what we're going to do today is start with a bit of information on who are Experian, and then each panel member is going to talk to you about their experience and their graduate scheme, their journey so far, and where the graduate programme can take you. We'll then finish with some questions. So within the questions tab, please do ask any questions you've got as we're going through the presentation. We will come back to those at the end, so we'll save some time for a Q&A. We've also got Maria from the Early Careers team who's going to be in the chat as well and might answer a couple of questions as we go as well. So if we get started then, like I said, in terms of introduction, so my name's Amy. I'm a talent acquisition partner for the Early Careers team at Experian. And what I do is recruit graduates, placement students and apprentices into Experian. I've been with the organisation for about a year and a half now. And just a little bit more about me. Before I joined Experian, I actually worked at Nottingham Trent University. So I was doing sort of careers advice and careers coaching for students, getting them ready for their applications, interviews and assessment centres. So I had a bit of a career change a year and a half ago, but have been working in the early career space for quite some time now. We also have Maria, like I said, she is having some tech issues, so can't actually come on camera, but she basically heads up the early careers recruitment team here at Experian and oversees all of the recruitment of all of our early careers cohorts. And she will be in the chat as well. So Deepak, can I hand over to you to do a little introduction?
Yeah, sure. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Hi everyone, I'm Deepak. I'm a data analyst at Experian. I started the grad scheme back in September 2021 and rolled off the scheme in September of this year. So I'm currently in the economics team as a data analyst. And yeah, you'll be able to give you more details on that a bit later on. I don't know if we're doing sort of a icebreaker hobby bit, but my default one that I go to is I once tripped over someone called Ben Stokes when I was walking through London. He's the current English cricket team captain. And then a couple of weeks later, it was announced he was injured. So hopefully that wasn't me, but yeah, that's me.
Amazing, thanks Deepak. Ellie?
Perfect, thank you. So my name's Ellie. I am, as you can see, a sales specialist at Experian. I started in the same intake as Deepak, so 2 years ago, just come off the graduate scheme, which I can, as I say, we'll go into in a little bit, but my hobbies are a bit less interesting, but I'm in a netball team and I did cheerleading as well when I was at uni. So yeah, more boring than Deepak's story, but that's me.
Thank you. Anish.
Hiya, I'm currently a graduate product manager. I've been at Experian for a year. My background is that I went to University of Bristol and I did electronic engineering, completely unrelated to product management. And my fun fact is that I can make a good lamb biryani. If you know, then you know. So yeah.
Brill, thank you. And finally, Adesua.
Hi guys, my name is Adesua and I'm a graduate software engineer, currently been at Experian for 1 year, so just started my second year at Experian. I went to the University of Nottingham for computer science as well. And interesting hobbies, I spend most of my weekends doing puzzles. Not very interesting, but doing puzzles and watching football is usually what my weekend's about.
Amazing, thank you. So hopefully that gives everybody an idea of who we've got on the call with us today. So, in terms of who are Experian then, so you may have heard of us, some of you may not have heard of us yet at all. Basically, we are quite well known for being the company that you go to if you want to check your credit score. So, if you are buying a house or applying for car finance, maybe a new phone contract, you may well have already checked your credit score with us, or you may well in the future. But we do a lot more than that as well. So we say that we unlock the power of data. What do we actually mean by that? Basically, we're one of the largest providers of data in the world, and we have sort of a purpose and a mission to achieve financial health for all. So that means supporting individuals to take control of their finances, we support businesses, and we support society as a whole to basically utilize and maximize the use of data. So just a couple of examples of how we support individuals take control of their own finances. These are just two of the products that we offer. So you may have heard of Experian Boost. It's a product that helps individuals to increase their credit scores by letting them share information about their regular spending that they wouldn't usually share. So it's things like payments into savings accounts or council tax payments, or even subscriptions to Netflix, Spotify, or Prime. So it helps them to increase their credit score and therefore increase their financial situation. We also have a product called Experian Support Hub. This is quite a new service we're offering, and it aims to help disabled people to get easier access to essential services, so like banking and utilities. So we basically offer a one-stop portal where customers can tell multiple businesses what their support needs are. So rather than having to go to each organisation on a case-by-case basis, we will do that for them. So again, it helps them to get easier access to those essential services and improve their financial situation. So that's some of the work we do with individuals. We also work with business to business, so B2B clients as well. And I'm sure you'll recognise some of these logos on the screen. But we work with Sky, for example, to help them to tailor TV adverts to individual households, depending on the demographic of each household. We also worked with the NHS during the pandemic, so using data to help them to predict spikes in COVID cases so they could basically prepare accordingly. So that's just a couple of examples of the work that we do outside of just being the credit score checking company. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of what you could get involved in if working at Experian. So I'm going to move on next to Deepak, who's going to talk to you a little bit more about his graduate scheme journey. So if I move over to Deepak.
Wrong time to get a bubble in my throat. Sorry. If we could jump forward a slide, please. So I'm a data analyst, came in as a graduate data analyst, and one of the things I've learned about this role is that it's very wide-reaching. As you might imagine, data analyst, it feels quite broad in terms of what its scope could be, and that's one of the beauties of it, I think. I know a number of different graduates who started out as graduate data analysts, but they've moved into data management, data engineering, data science, even software engineering. So it's a great way to make the role your own as much as anything else. So for example, Amy mentioned we do a lot of the credit scoring. So one of the things that we help do is we have to create these scores and update them. As you can imagine, as we travel through and data changes, we have to make sure they're nice and up to date. So we try and use the traditional methods, but then we're also using these new machine learning techniques. In order for us to analyze the data, we need to get data in. So one of the things that I was involved with was bringing in some business data into the business so that we can then analyze that, dashboard it up and send it out to other clients so they know who they can reach out to and how that works for them. Another nice specific one for clients, whenever you apply to a bank, you have to ask them, they have a set of rules that they match you against around income, around your history and that kind of thing. So we have to change them from time to time as well. And then these ones are a bit more relevant to my current role in the economics team, where we take in a lot of data from the government and from the Office of National Statistics, and then we have to make our forecasts and stuff out of it. So it's sort of every step of the way, wherever data comes in, whether it's our own data or someone else's data, we then output something from that. And I think that is one of the things I've really enjoyed about the grad scheme is I was able to rotate around a number of different teams and get involved in different parts of each process. So I've learned a lot As you can imagine, for an analyst role, you need to do some analytical thinking. So it's a great way of essentially using problem solving. And that's essentially what most of my work is, trying to figure out what the problem is and then, okay, how can we go on to fix it? Communication, another big one. Nice sort of test today, as it were. So we've got the presentation side of stuff, taking what we've learned and also then translating it into something that other people can use. With these kind of roles, you do tend to work in very, very fine granularity, and that isn't necessarily relevant for every single audience. Sometimes you need to take it up a level so everyone can get a different understanding, and that varies based on who you're talking to. Teamwork and networking, massive piece. I know when I started, someone said to me, make sure you learn how to network. And I thought, what on earth does that mean? But essentially, it means reaching out, talking to people, seeing what they do, and more likely than not, at some point in the future, you'll have to go and talk to them and ask some questions. Good example, Anish the other day dropped me a message because he wanted to know a bit more about a certain project. So luckily, I knew what I was doing, but if I didn't, I'd be able to send him on to someone else kind of thing. Time management as well, of course. 9 to 5, there's only so much you can do. And then you also have to manage other people's time as well, because if you're asking questions and working with them, you need to relate a lot. And then, as you can imagine, the technical side of stuff. So these are all things that, so Python, SQL, VBA, R, Tableau, WPS, these are all things that I learned on the job. These weren't prerequisites for the role. And I think that's one of the great things about the role and the grad scheme as a whole is the fact that we're here to learn. We're not here just to deliver straight off the bat. And that really helps when settling in and helping you find your feet and what will work for you ultimately. And I think one of the things about this role is it's wide reaching. You can figure out what works for you and then go into whatever role. So people have gone into data management roles, people have gone into data engineering, or like myself, who's sort of stayed in this analysis space. So that's sort of the role and where it can take you and what I do on a sort of more day-to-day basis, mostly Excel, but I do like to throw a bit of Python in there every so often. So if we jump to the next slide, please. So as even though I'm a data analyst, I think a bit like Anish, I didn't necessarily start out in my uni career wanting to go into this. Didn't actually know it really existed, to be fair. So I did chemistry at uni, and it was my placement year where I figured out that data analysis was a thing, and I got a chance to be in that role and thought, actually, there's a really nice application of my degree where if you take the science out of it and you look at what I'm actually looking at and collecting and analyzing, those same skills apply across the board. I think sometimes, especially when we go through school and A levels, we think, oh my God, I've got to get a degree, and then that locks you into a certain path, and that's it. I've got to be a chemist from now on. But the beauty of these sort of grad schemes is you've got a skill set that degree has taught you. Some of them are more specialized, some of them aren't, but it is applicable in a number of different ways. And sometimes we just don't know where it can be applied. So for me, data analyst, chemist to data analyst actually made a lot of sense. Again, starting in a career can be quite daunting. There's a lot that we have to learn and do. And so this grad scheme was a great way to sort of bridge that gap between university and work and start my career. The development available on the scheme is something that I think has been really, really helpful. There's a number of different things like leadership and giving feedback and those sort of things where there were specific training opportunities for us on the grad scheme that we got to do early on and quickly and were almost instantly applicable for our journeys going forward. And that wasn't available to people who weren't on the grad scheme, so that was great. Great way to build a network. So the 2 photos there, we went ice skating a couple of years back, I think, and then this was our cohort graduating from the scheme. So you can see I started out in a cohort of about 50. And that basically meant straight off the bat, there were people who were doing similar roles to me. We're all starting out in the same place, and it meant that going forward, I can now call on these people going forward, annoy them a little bit with questions, that sort of thing. There is plenty of support to settle into your role, and because there's so many of us as well, and it's a really, really welcoming company, asking the questions, getting to know people, go and seeing what opportunities are available, even if currently it's not there, what could you want to change as well? That's something that's a big part of Experian, and like I said, the flexibility that goes into the role and making it your own. So that's sort of my journey and how I've found it. I think I'm really lucky. I've had a really, really good time, met some really nice people, and yeah, looking forward to carrying on in the econ team. So I'll hand over now.
Yeah. So what does a graduate software engineer do at Experian? And if you go to the next slide, please. So essentially, software engineers design, develop, and then maintain software solutions for end users. And you might have heard about this, but we do this using an agile methodology, especially at Experian, and we work in 2-week sprints, which is essentially a timeline of 2 weeks, where we get requirements at the beginning, design it, develop, start building the software, testing it, and incrementally keep improving it. So maybe adding features before we release it completely into the live environment. But yeah, so I mentioned about creating software for end users, and there are 2 different types of end users that we create software for. Firstly, it might be external, so our clients. I think Amy mentioned businesses. It might be like people like you and I. So we could get requirements from external clients for a software to create, or that we've already created, in order for them to use it. And this is usually passed down from either like the analysts or project managers, product owners, to us with all the information that we need to build it. So this means that software engineers don't necessarily work as closely with the clients. We don't really get that face-to-face with them, but we do work through the analysts. And if there's more information that we need to build, if there are any questions we have, we'll take that through the analysts, back up to the clients, and then might come back down as well. So it's a lot of back and forth of it. And then a second type of end users that we might work for are just people at Experian. So software engineers at Experian build a lot of the internal systems that help make our lives a lot easier. So just by helping to automate a lot of the manual, time-consuming tasks. An example of this on my last team actually was, in order to connect to lenders and aggregators, we need certificates to authenticate ourselves and show the lenders we are Experian, we're allowed to access this sort of information, let's say. But previously, the way engineers, the software engineers were doing it was just writing little lines of code. And the issue with this is error prone as well. And obviously we're humans, so we might not catch all the errors. You might have misspelled something. So a few months ago, I coded up a certificate generator Windows application, just to help automate that. I had like a nice pretty user interface of all the pretty buttons, so no one can break anything, and all the code was in the back end. So kind of removed that chance of getting errors or errors seeping through, essentially. Day-to-day tasks as a software engineer, it kind of varies like across the teams, obviously, and the products you're working on. But it might be like adding testing. At some point in the team I was in as well, analysts had to manually test a change to make sure the software was working how it's supposed to be. But they focus a lot more on automating a lot of the testing. So all the analysts need to do is hop on, see the tests are running fine, and that's testing done, essentially. And I guess other tasks we might do be like updating packages to ensure that there are no vulnerabilities in our software, but also mainly just constantly looking to create helpful software and improve our existing solutions, writing more efficient code, if anything's slow, trying to make it quicker. And yeah, and this leads on, I guess, to one of the benefits of being a software engineer at Experian. Like Deepak mentioned, we have rotation through teams, and it might even be through business units, which kind of allows you to explore the different career paths that you can have coming off the grad scheme. So I've had so many opportunities. On the diagram on the right, you can kind of see the different types of career paths that you'd be able to explore. So I've done, like I've mentioned, a bit of front-end development, DevOps engineering. I'm currently working as an SDET. And this is something I've really enjoyed. It's just getting to work with all the different technologies and in the different career paths, especially for me, because I went to university studying computer science, but I wasn't exactly sure of which career path I wanted to go down to. So it's been nice to kind of get a feel of different aspects of computer science and software engineering. And I guess as I progress out of the grad scheme, I'd be able to show this is all I did in order to get a different role if I wanted to, like a front-end developer. Amy, can I go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so my journey so far, like I said, I studied computer science at the University of Nottingham. When I first came in, I got put on a project, a 3-month project with 4 other software engineers, graduate software engineers that joined at the same time as me. That was quite nice. But we came in and got given this project to rebuild one of the internal systems that Experian uses called Job Manager. And the issue with Job Manager was that it was built quite a while ago, so it was slow. It wasn't using all the shiny new cloud serverless technology that we use now. So it meant that if one bit of it broke, the whole thing went down. A lot of people weren't happy. Yeah, also the user interface was just very dull. It was just kind of black and white, nothing really interesting. So that was quite a cool project to work on. It was an AWS as well, and I've never used AWS. So it was really interesting, and working with the other graduates as well. Also important to say, sorry, that 2 of them didn't study computer science. So I just wanted to point that out, that you don't have to study computer science if you want to apply for this role. One of them studied physics and one studied accounting, so very different, and they're getting along well still at the company, so that's good. Yeah, and then I rotated into the API team, which I talked a little bit about when I did the certificate generator app and a few other projects. And then I moved to London a few months ago, and I'm now currently working as an SDET, which is a software developer in test. It's still got the software development aspect to it, which I still really enjoy, but it's more focusing on testing and making sure the software works exactly how it's meant to, essentially. And so far, really enjoying it, really enjoying the way we work as well. And I guess skills used and needed, I guess, in this role, presentation and public speaking. So after the 3-month project in AWS, we had to present back to the business unit. And I'm not the best at public speaking. It's not really my strong suit, but I've been trying to push myself a lot, and you get these kind of opportunities at Experian to practice that and to keep working at it. Yeah, and then collaboration, communication, active listening all come a bit hand in hand. As a software engineer, you wouldn't just be working by yourself. You're working in a team. You're working with other engineers and other testers. So you need to collaborate. You might be paired programming with another software engineer. You might be being challenged on what you've coded, and you might be challenging someone else on what they've coded. So you've just got to be open to listening and hearing the reviews and improving your code. And then lastly, just the right attitude to learn and desire to improve software. And that's something I've noticed a lot at Experian, is that everyone's always looking to learn more and constantly improve the software. Just because a software is 5 years old and still works doesn't mean it can't be improved. So that's something I've really noticed at Experian. This kind of leads on to things I also like about Experian and working as a software engineer, but that you don't stop learning. We've got access to a website called Pluralsight, which has loads of different courses, which has helped me improve my technical skills as well, outside of the work I'm actually doing as well. So you can look up some front-end development courses and learn outside of the team that you've been working in as well. Also, they offer you the chance to get your Azure certifications, AWS certifications, all these courses, which is just great. And I guess outside of the actual work as well, there's a lot of fun stuff, and early careers are responsible for putting on quite a few things. There's a lot of socials. We actually planned a fete this summer that just went past, and you can see you've got the sumo suits. We had an ice cream van, tug of war, and it was all really fun. So I just really enjoyed it. I'll pass on to Anish now for graduate product manager.
Cool, thank you. The next slide, please. So I'll just go through what the role product management actually means. It's fairly new relative to like the corporate world. So before I start, what is a product? It's something that a company will sell. It can be an app, it could be like an API like product, it could be many different things. So it's essentially, this role essentially is about how do you manage that? How do you take it from like an idea? How do you take it from, oh, this problem exists, we need to make a solution from it? So it initially starts at a very early stage where a product manager is involved. It's like, okay, so we clearly have this one problem in market. The size of the market, you start like seeing all the financials as well. Is there even a need, a demand for this? You start talking to clients, stuff like that. So very early on, it's establishing what are we doing? Like, is there a need for it? Validation, stuff like that. And then step two, you're now figuring out, okay, so we've figured out what the problem is. We figured out that there is actually a demand for this. What do we do now? Now you start planning what the product is, designing the product. So in my experience, the current rotation I'm in is B2B. So that means selling to other businesses, whether that's banks or mortgage brokers or lenders, stuff like that, essentially in my current team. And yeah, so for them, we start like having discussions. What does this look like? How do we start designing this? What could we actually sell to them? And then also alongside that, you decide, so what are we going to charge them? Like, what is this going to look like? Is it an app that they can like have? Is this something that we can give to them and then they can manage themselves, stuff like that? And then you start taking it over. Once all the strategies are figured out, once all the planning is figured out, you take it over to development. You have to write quite a lot of documentation here and there around, okay, what are we actually building? What are the features? And then you pass this on to the software engineers who actually then develop the actual product. And then once all, again, this is a very high level view. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but once all that is sorted, there's a lot of steps in the development phase, even from a product management point of view. But essentially, once that's all done, you're now prepared to launch, because now that the product is ready, you've tested it, there's clearly a demand, you start making marketing and sales campaigns. You start working with sales and marketing teams to essentially see how are we going to now position this in market. You start looking at competitors. Do you look at upskilling the like sales teams to be like, what is this product? You start teaching them like what is actually happening in the product itself, how to sell it, stuff like that. And then they go ahead and then sell that product, and then it's ready to launch. Now, your job's not finished there. You've completed the product, but now you actually have to track the performance. Like, are people having any issues with it, any client complaints, stuff like that? You take on board and you see if you can make any changes to the product. So there's a lot of work that comes even after that. And then long-term wise, once this product has matured, there's like a bell curve that you can find online. It's like talking about the product life cycle, and eventually it will hit maturity where not a lot of people are using the product as much anymore. There's probably a replacement out there. Now you start looking at how do we retire it? Because it's still costing you money to keep the product running. Now you start looking at, okay, so what do we do with it now? Is it worth keeping just one or two clients on? It depends on like your strategic goals, your business goals, stuff like that. So the role involves you being involved, depending on the product that you work on, in throughout the whole life cycle. So it is a very varied role, and you're involved in every part of the cycle. So you'll have to wear many hats. So if we move on to the next slide, I'll go more into the actual role that I've been doing. So I actually come from electronic background, so it was an engineering background. I didn't really enjoy the technical side too much, but I enjoyed it from a more businessy point of view. Okay, so like we're working on this tech and stuff like that. How can it solve problems, like real world problems? So I enjoyed it from that element. So that's where my degree, you could say, kind of had crossover. But essentially, every other product grad is like from a completely different background. Some have accounting, some have business. I think one of them is a software engineer as well. So it's a very varied background. So it doesn't really matter which degree you've done. There usually will be some crossover, because regardless of the degree you do, you still have a lot of those soft skill crossovers, like managing quite a little, like multiple assignments at the same time, stuff like that. And then just going more into my time at Experian so far, I've been here a year. So in that time, I've had quite a varied amount of exposure. So I've been involved in a lot of design experience. So there was this one app that we were making for mortgage brokers, and essentially it needed a design before we came to the clients for feedback. So I was able to design that in an application called Figma. And then also I've been involved in consumer interviews. So that's essentially when we bring people into the office, just people, just random people. They get paid to get surveyed for like an hour. And then we essentially just walk them through a demo and ask them like their feedback and stuff like that. And then we then take this back to the dev teams and see if we can make these changes into features. What would they look like? And then also client migration, like as I touched on in the previous slide, not only will you be working on products that are new, you will also be working on products that are old. And once they're being retired, what do? You have to start migrating clients over. Think about the way that even, for example, Apple look at migrating you over from one iPhone to another. They try to incentivize you. There's a whole process behind it. So it's very similar in that sense. And yeah, a lot of strategy work as well, like I touched upon, like at the very early stages, looking at what should we price it? Do we decide to price it like this? Or what are our like competitors pricing, stuff like that? And there's a lot of innovation research involved as well, because you can always find ways to improve processes, products, everything. So there's a lot of that element of being just aware of everything happening around you. And my current project is working on a new like machine learning banking product. Can't go into too much detail for compliance reasons, but yeah, so it's quite a varied like role in terms of skills used. A lot of communication, as you can imagine. You're working between so many different teams, whether it's developers, sales, marketing, yeah, and finance. Like quite a lot of varied exposure, and obviously the senior leadership team as well. There's a lot of presenting involved as well, whether that's internally or externally, like with clients. I've added the design part just because, although it's not guaranteed that you'll have this experience, it's just that in my case, I had to go through that. And yeah, like the biggest part about all of this is you'll be writing quite a lot, creating product vision, product requirements, stuff like that. If you don't understand some of the terms I'm saying, definitely Google them. There's a lot of like material out there now about product management in the past few years. And yeah, a lot of planning, strategy, stuff like that. And yeah, and you will have to get some exposure. It's a data company, so you will have exposure to a lot of data, and then sieving through that and making sure that when you're presenting to senior leadership, that you're presenting like the right stories and stuff like that. And then I'll just quickly touch upon the final thing, which is what happens now, like what happens after the graduate scheme. So with product management, it can be very varied. Like you can, like a lot of people often pursue the leadership route. So that's essentially going to senior product manager, then going to product domain lead, and then a managing director. So there is quite a lot of leadership exposure in this role. However, I've seen people move horizontally as well. So they either move into the data team, so they become more specialized in the more technical side of product management, where you'll be working on a lot more technical products. That's kind of where I'm sort of leaning towards at the moment. But I have quite a lot of choice, and I have time as it's a 2-year program. So at the moment, I'm just networking with as many teams as possible. It's a very big organization. So as you can imagine, we have a lot of exposure. But yeah, that kind of covers off my role, where it can lead and what it involves. Passing on to Ellie.
Perfect. Thank you. So my role, as it says, is a graduate sales associate. It might be a bit more self-explanatory than others, but this is obviously within the go-to-market sales department at Experian. So if you just go to the next slide, please, Amy. Thank you. Perfect. So when I started, so 2 years ago now, my original role was being a sales development representative in new business. So I guess the day-to-day when you start is getting leads for the company. So trying to engage with people that we don't already work with. And there's a lot of activity on the phone. So it's not cold calling as such, because we've always had relationships with these people, or we've spoken to them before. But you are responsibility for kind of that original outreach. You know, we might not have spoken to someone for a couple of years, and it's, I guess, your role to go out and see if now's a better time to pick things up again. So the day-to-day is, you know, you're working campaigns. Some of the account teams, I guess, will give you areas of their bases that they want to get more into and sell more products into. So you're working, I guess, for the account teams and the higher up sales teams to help them and to get leads. And the benefit of that is that you're working really closely with them. So as you're obviously very early on in your sales career, and you can kind of shadow them, see how they would handle the sales cycle. Because at the very beginning, you're thrown into it, but you're not expected to be closing, you know, thousands of pounds worth of deals. Your original job is more to open that door and get the client in front of the salesperson. And then it's, you know, you can shadow and kind of learn from that. The other route that I think the year after me went down was account management. So this is kind of existing clients when we've already got them, they're using an Experian service. It's then their job to kind of manage that account, check the usage. It's all about building relationships with that client rather than, new from new, and kind of selling into your existing base rather than trying to get new people in from scratch. So those are the two kind of ways that you might start before it moves on to a more full cycle sales role. So I did the new business role for just under a year. Go to the next slide. Thank you. So a little bit about my journey in the role. So I actually studied politics at Leeds University. So as a couple of the other grads have said, there's no relevance to that to selling data. Definitely just up for anyone that, I guess the key skills for sales would be negotiating. You've got to be quite resilient because obviously not everything closes. You don't sell everything. Got to be confident with presenting and pitching because ultimately it is your job to reach out and sell. It's a very fast-paced environment, but it's super social as well. And there's a really good team around you and great people to learn from. So since I joined 2 years ago, I've closed just over $500,000 of new business deals. So that's in kind of the role that I'm in now, which is full sales cycle. So there's some really good incentives, it's really rewarding. And we also have big social events, big incentives, there's holidays if you do really well. And it's just generally a great kind of place to start your career. And as I say, really good social environment, but people are there to help overall. Perfect. So I just thought I'd touch a little bit on how I've progressed and the different routes that you can kind of go down within sales. So as I say, it's kind of split between new business, which is the sales development representative, and account management, which is existing. So I went from new business to sales specialist. So how it generally works once a deal has been passed on and is being worked is you'll have a business development manager who sells every product we have, intros it, closes it, gets the pricing, that kind of thing. And then the sales specialist only sells one area. So I work in identity and fraud. And I have to be, I guess, an expert when I'm speaking to clients, know the whole ins and outs of the product. So there's many different roles, really. The colleague that I kind of started with, he went down the business development manager route, so a little bit of everything, but I will sell better if I know I can't get caught out because I know everything about the product. And you can just kind of progress in those routes and just get more and more senior, work bigger deals and bigger bases. And then very similarly with account management, you might start off with, I don't know, a 500k patch. And then by the end of it, you could have millions of pounds in your portfolio. So there's real opportunities to kind of progress, try different things, people hop from new business to account management. And yeah, I would just generally say I've absolutely loved it. And if you're up for hardworking, fast-paced kind of environment, then it's really, really good opportunity.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ellie, and everyone else for going through exactly what your role covers. So just before we move on to the questions element, we just wanted to sort of bring in how our graduate programs link together, because you've obviously heard from 4 different graduates doing 4 very different roles, but they do all play a key part at Experian. They do all link together. So we've just got an example on the screen of, say, a launch of an Experian app. So just an example of something that we do. And I'm just going to ask each graduate if you could just very briefly say what your role does, in what role you play, in the launch of an Experian app, for example. So if we start with Arnish, what exactly would a product manager do? Are you struggling to come off mute?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, so in this sort of situation, when you're trying to launch something new, a product manager, very high level point of view, would be just involved in why are we making this app? Is there a need for it? What does this app look like? How are we going to make it? Stuff like that. So very high level strategic point of view in terms of which teams are going to be needing to be involved, stuff like that. And then it's basically taking it through the whole life cycle between different teams. But yeah.
Perfect. And Adesua, what about from a software developer perspective?
Yeah, so it's important to get all the requirements. So what's the vision of this app? What do we want it to do? Who is it for? What is it meant to look like? And then we will break it down into, like I said, 4 tasks that we can work on in different sprints and over a time period. Adding all the features, working closely with managers, with the owners to make sure it's aligned with what they wanted it to look like, what it's meant to look like. And I guess, yeah, what's responsible for the testing, making sure there's testing involved, and just to make sure that it does work the way we want it to work. It would have to be promoted through different environments. So we'd work in like the dev environment, and the live environment is where it gets out to the end users, but it's constantly promoting it through different environments before it gets to the live. So it's quite a long process of making sure everything's actually working before it actually gets released. But yeah.
Well, Deepak, what about from a data analytics perspective?
Yeah, so we kind of would be involved in just about every step. So from product manager's point of view, we would be feeding any data based on what currently exists and also what we're able to do. As you can imagine, there's a lot of great ideas out there, but if we don't have the data to back it up, unfortunately, we can't do anything about it. That includes stuff around GDPR and data privacy. There are some great things we'd like to do, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're currently allowed to do them. So sometimes it means working with regulators on that point of view. We also have to make sure that we're using the correct kind of data. So we might start out with dummy data, then you've got the actual data, you've got anonymized data, all of that all the way through. So that might play more of a role in the development part. And then there'll be the monitoring side of it. So once people start using the app, data will start coming in. So we need to be able to ingest that and then tie it in. One of the great things about Experian is we talked about unlocking the power of our data. It's not everything we've got isn't sort of separated into separate buckets. The thing that makes us unique in the marketplace is the fact that we take everything we have and try and join it all together like a big puzzle piece. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you've got data feeding all the way through. So that's where we sort of touch on in the process.
Perfect. And Ellie, what about the sales team?
Perfect. So a bit more self-explanatory with this one, but we obviously then take it to market and try and sell it. It's worth noting that with the sales role, it is just business to business. Bit of a common misconception: you're not calling up people trying to flog credit scores. It is, you're working with businesses who have quite specific needs. So we would then, if this was a new product, we would also feed it back to like product managers and I guess the data teams who've made it. Kind of we've taken it to market. That is, what they need our feedback of what the customers actually think. So yeah, quite simple from a sales perspective.
Perfect, thank you. So yeah, like everybody said, it's sort of very much a cycle, and feedback will go around to the various teams. So it's not sort of a linear process. Sorry, it's very much a cycle. And hopefully that just gives you an idea of how the 4 very different roles do work together in Experian and how you work very closely with other teams as well. So 2 final slides just before we move on to any questions. So we've just got some pros and cons and what's exciting about a graduate scheme at Experian if you are sort of weighing up your options. So like you've already heard, really, there's some really good job prospects from your graduate programme. You can take it sort of almost where you want to take it, really. The more you put in, the more you get out, and it really does open a lot of doors for you sort of after you roll off the programme as well. You do get the opportunity to innovate and create in your problem solving daily across all of our graduate schemes. So you're given real life projects to work on. So you really do have the opportunity to make an impact straight away. The cons are that it can be a steep learning curve and it can be challenging, but you are supported from day one. So like I think Deepak referred to it, when you're on the programme, you are on a development programme. So you do training and workshops throughout the time that you're on the graduate scheme to upskill in any areas you might have gaps in. So you're supported throughout that learning curve as much as possible to make all the learning as fun as possible. And then what's exciting, like we've said, it's endless opportunities. You really do get the opportunity to kickstart your career, and you're part of an early careers community and cohort as well. So we've got some images on the slide there of training events and social events where we've brought the early careers cohorts together. You all start together at the same time as well. We start everybody each September. So you're not just starting on your own. You're very much part of a community. You're all in the same boat, and you've got that peer-to-peer support network as well, which is really exciting. So if you are interested in our roles, you can scan this QR code, or I think Marie will be able to pop a link in the chat. So you can head to our website and have a look at what roles we've got available. We are having further roles go available over the next month or two as well. So you may not be able to apply for them all straight away, but you'll be able to see which roles are coming soon. And what you can do on the website is register your interest, and then you'll get notified as soon as those roles go live. So we've got a mixture of roles for 2024 across graduate schemes and year in industry placements as well. So we've got graduate software engineers, HR graduates, marketing placements, data analysts, graduate sales associates, and lots more as well. So do take a look at the website, scan that QR code, or have a look at the link in the chat. Perfect. So we've now got a bit of time for any questions. So let me just open this up. I know Maria's been sort of having a look at questions as we go. I did see one come up about sort of only a graduate data analyst role currently being available. But like I said, there are further roles coming soon. So if you just register your interest, you'll get notified as soon as all of the other roles go live as well. So if you have any questions, do post them in the chat. I'll just have a quick look through if we've missed any. We've had a few questions on sort of what can you do from different degree backgrounds. Hopefully we've sort of answered that as we've been going along, in terms of we don't necessarily always specify that you have to come from a certain degree background. Like a lot of the graduates, they've studied courses that weren't directly related to their programs. So it's more about what you're interested in and what transferable skills, knowledge and experiences that you've got. So we don't always specify that you have to come from a certain degree background. So we've got a question, do you have any tips on the software engineering application process? We have the same process for all of our graduate schemes. So I can talk through the application process in a bit of detail. The first stage is a CV application. So you apply with your CV. I think key things that we're always looking for is a motivation and passion for the role. Tailoring your CV to Experian is really important, and tailoring to the role. I know it can take quite a bit of time, and it's a lot easier to have one CV you can send to lots of different employers. But taking the time to tailor your CV to specific employers really does help, and it's definitely worth spending the time doing that. So for software engineering, definitely tell us about sort of your interest in the career path and any transferable skills you've got. You then go through to some online testing, which is like a numerical reasoning type test, and then a situational judgment test. We'd say do some practice tests as much as possible beforehand. So often universities can offer you free practice tests just to sort of have a go at doing them before you do the real thing. We then do a one-way recorded video interview. So you have 4 questions to answer, and you just record those, and then they come through to a member of our team to watch. And the final stage is a virtual assessment centre on Microsoft Teams as well. So top tips really, like I've said, just doing your research on the role and on Experian, and really getting across why you want this opportunity. That goes a really long way.
Oh, if I could just add to that as well, sorry.
Yeah.
As well, I was just going to say with the assessment centre as well, just be yourself. Literally, they just like to see your personality shine through, for sure with that. And then, like Amy said as well, emphasise those transferable skills because, like I said, you don't have to study computer science, but they like to see, the passion for the role, the active listening, the communication, the confidence. They just like to see that. So, just wanted to add that in.
No. Does anybody else have any top tips? I know it might seem a while back that you had your application process.
I'd just like to add in the assessment centre as well. If your assessment has a group interview, just make sure just to listen to everyone. I know it can seem as if you need to get your ideas forward, but you're judged on how you work with the team. Don't focus too much on the actual assessment itself. Definitely work in a team group, but they're assessing you on how you work in a team and how you listen to others and stuff like that. So I think that's a common misconception, and it helped me quite a lot when I reached out to someone about preparing for a group assessment. So if you haven't done one before, that's probably my top tip. Just make sure you're listening, make sure you're working as a team, stuff like that.
Well, thank you. Another quick question we've had, are postgrad students allowed to apply? And yeah, absolutely. We are open to applications from undergrads and postgrads. And the duration of the scheme, so it's a 2-year graduate scheme, but it is a permanent opportunity. So basically we support you at the end of your 2 years to progress into a higher level position after that. So it is a 2-year development programme you're on, but it's a permanent opportunity. We have had another question. This is more for the graduates. So what is the graduate community like at Experian, and what's your favourite thing about it? Who wants to go first?
I'll jump in here if that's all right. So as I said in my little section, I went to Leeds Uni. So I moved to Nottingham. I'm not from Nottingham. Genuinely didn't know one person in the city. And you're joining. I know in my intake there was 50. I don't know how many there is this year, but there's regular socials, there's group chats, there's the opportunity. If you really want to get stuck in, you can get stuck in, and it really is the super social. People are making group chats for living, accommodation, that kind of thing. So it's still got that student community that was good about uni. So yeah, if you're worried about that side of things, then if you want to get stuck in, there's absolutely things that you can get stuck in with. In terms of the intake and the social side of things.
Perfect, thank you. Does anybody else have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think sort of on the sort of flip side of what Ellie was saying, well, not currently, but I used to live in Leicester, and the office that I was based at is Nottingham. So in spite of not living in the same city, I was still able to take part and be part of that grad community. And one of the great things about Experian is we have this flexible working. I don't think any of us on the call are in the office, so it kind of talks to it in terms of this is what we do. And so we have a really good balance between that sort of virtual side, but also making sure that we're there in person and we make the most of it. And one of the things that is great about working Experian and the grad scheme and the grad community is we're not competing against each other, we're working together kind of thing. And that sort of collaborative team working aspect applies both in the work sense, but equally in the sort of social sense as well, because we're all there to help each other. And it's just like Eddie said, the whole sort of uni aspect of, we're all new here, we all want to figure it out together, that really carries through. And one of the best bits about it is the fact that in spite and despite we work on so many different parts of the business, quite literally being on a different floor as well, we're still in contact and we still get along really, really well.
Well, thank you. And we've had another question as well, is what's been the most surprising thing about working at Experian? Or something maybe that you didn't expect before you joined?
I think for me, it's the breadth of, from a sales perspective, the breadth of what we can offer. just being totally transparent, I didn't know if I'd just be selling credit scores, which I don't, you know, I didn't know there was opportunities in like identity and fraud, and like, you know, we sell services on where is best to put a Starbucks based on the type of buyers you have. Like, the breadth of services we offer, it's not just credit scores, it's a lot more interesting than that. And that probably surprised me the most, because it's more the business to business side of things. And so as like a student, you wouldn't really realize it. But yeah.
Also, just wanted to add to that, something I found surprising as well, I guess, is just how much Experian do to help people fit in as well. They've got like Experian resource groups as well, and I'm part of one, the Black professionals at Experian. So even if you're not working with people from similar backgrounds, it's like you can still reach out and talk, and as like everyone's emphasized, network across Experian as well. I know they've got like women at Experian. They've got so many different resource groups as well, just to help you find people and get to know people a lot faster. But yeah, that was something that surprised me. Oh, also, sorry, loads of pizza. That's it.
Perfect. Deepak or Anish, was there anything that surprised you, or is that mainly covered it, do you think?
I was going to say I didn't know the team that I currently work in existed when I joined the company initially. So much like the rest of us, we were like, oh, credit scores. Well, you know, how hard can it be? And you know, you look at the size of the company and how much other stuff we do. And yeah, so like, it also taught me a lot about how, you know, mortgages and credit cards and all the rest of it works, which I didn't have much idea about. And there's some really good resources out there as well. So there is sort of a real life application, which is quite helpful. But yeah, when I joined, I didn't realize we did economics, or that we did forecasting and that kind of thing, and then the sort of breadth of work that we do, and quite literally how many people there are, because Experian is a massive company.
Perfect, thank you. So just the final question is sort of, it's a tricky one to answer. It's what's the ratio for getting into the data analyst graduate scheme each year? It's a hard one to answer sort of off the top of our heads. We do get a lot of applications. It's hard just to sort of say an exact ratio. But the key thing we'd say is what I said earlier around really tailoring your application to Experian, doing your research, really showing your passion for the role, and that can absolutely help increase your success. Perfect. Well, we're bang on 3 o'clock now, so we'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for all of your questions as well, for sort of engaging throughout the session. Thank you to our graduate panel as well, and sharing your experiences. On the slide, there is sort of our website and contact information, and like I said, Maria posted the link in the chat as well, so do take a look. But yeah, thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.